Hello, welcome to Accounting Robots, how to automate the back office with our webcast and panel discussion. My name is Lindy Antonelli, partner with Armanino and Controllers Council Board Chair. Let's take a look at our agenda for today's webcast. First, I'll introduce our panelists, then share the results of the 2020 survey on automation in the back office finance. Next, we will get right to our panel discussion with some key questions for our automation experts. Speaking of questions, we will have Q&A. So please feel free to use the GoToWebinar control panel to ask questions early and often. Finally, we'll wrap up with some information about the Controllers Council, including save the dates. Now, before we get started, a couple of housekeeping items. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email with a link to this webcast archive. Again, use the control panel to ask questions. And a surprise, webcast attendees can receive a special discount for Controllers Council membership. The code will be announced at the end of the webcast. Now with that, I'm very pleased to introduce our panelists. Nick Ezzo, VP of Marketing at Auditoria.ai, out of Santa Clara, California, and a career finance technology expert. Chris Wetmore, Principal at RSM Technology Advisory Practice based out of Boston, a digital transformation guru. And Chris Siegfried, affectionately called Ziggy, and he's our CFO at Armanino from San Ramon, California. He's representing a day-to-day CFO. Now, Nick, tell us how you got into accounting and finance automation.
Well, I've been doing finance automation for the last, I don't know, probably 7 or 8 years for a couple of different companies. And honestly, if you have time for just a quick story, I have a friend who's an FP&A guy. I've known him for 20 years. Before he and I were, had kids or anything like that. But I've known Mike for a long time. His family and my family go on vacation in Lake Tahoe every 4th of July. And while we're all on the beach in Lake Tahoe, Mike is back in the cabin closing the books, because 4th of July might be a holiday for the rest of us, but it's not for finance people. It's literally, it's the close of the books at the end of the month, half year close, half year replan. And, every year in Lake Tahoe, I always thought it's such a shame that Mike can't be there with us on the beach in Lake Tahoe with his family. And I've made it my mission to improve the lives of finance people and help them get their lives back, stop working nights, weekends, and holidays. And so I'm doing everything I can at this company and my previous 2 companies to help do that.
That's cool. That's a great story to share, Nick. Chris, can you please share a snapshot of your career?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me. I've been 20 years technology. I spent the first, bulk of my career doing technology strategy, digital transformation, ERP selection, implementation, just helping, all mid-sized companies and large-sized companies with technology strategy. And probably about 5 years ago, really started to get into the automation space, specifically around RPA and artificial intelligence, and sort of bringing that technology and awareness to our clients and trying to deliver value in a pragmatic fashion. So it's been a really exciting, 20 years. I can't believe it's been that long, but affectionately the technology geek on the call, I guess.
So true. Thanks for sharing. And Ziggy, for all our controller and CFO attendees, tell us about your journey as a CPA reaching the C-suite.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thinking about this topic, it reminded me that I started back at KPMG back when there was a Big 8. And I remember the audit department getting its first computer for the auditors to use in the office. That was one computer for the entire audit team. So automation has come a long way, obviously. After leaving public accounting, I went and did work for a number of different firms, companies in technology space as a controller or a CFO, lots of turnarounds. I sold a number of businesses. And then about 14 years ago, Armanino was the auditing firm that my company at the time used. And after we sold the business, I was invited to join the Armanino consulting practice to work on special projects, systems implementations like Chris, revenue recognition, technical accounting. And then about 7 years ago, the firm wanted to create a professional C-suite, and I was the first CFO hired. Since then, we've quadrupled in size. We're up to about 1,400 people. And automation is a big part of the job, both from the firm's perspective as well as my department's.
Yeah, that's an awesome career. And I do know, because we worked together, that you actually started our Intact practice a long time ago.
I did. I was the first certified implementer.
Yeah, great. And then you guys brought me on, and we're taking that. That's a booming business too inside of our firm. So thanks for sharing, everybody. Now I'm going to turn it over to Nick to share the automation survey results and provide some background on his company, Auditoria.ai.
Thanks, Lindy, and once again, it's great to be here. So my name is Nick Ezzo. I'm the Vice President of Marketing for a company called Auditoria. So who are we? A quick word about Auditoria.ai. We're an industry pioneer. We offer a product called SmartFlow Skills. It's the first cloud-native, AI-driven cognitive automation platform for ERP. Now, that's a mouthful. It's a lot of words, but I'll net it out for you what that means. We harness modern technology like artificial intelligence, natural language processing, machine learning, optical character recognition, and so on, to transform the next generation finance back office. We automate repetitive tasks for collections and vendor management, delivering predictive analytics, interactive responses for your AP team, your AR team, audit, forecasting, and more. So, and we also streamline your shared services function, helping you save and recover thousands of hours per year for you and your finance teams. We partner with Sage Intacct, Oracle, Workday, and others. So happy to talk to anyone on the call after this. So next slide, please. Let's get into the survey. So earlier this year, we set out to answer a couple of questions. So what are the challenges facing today's modern accounting and finance teams, and what's the level of automation in the back office? And so we started on this journey right before the pandemic. So a lot of these answers, just to put it into context, were collected in the February-March timeframe. We're planning on running this again early next year to see if the answers change, but we reached out to a few hundred corporate finance professionals. Everybody had to answer all 12 questions, and then this is all across the United States, across a wide range of age and gender groups. And by the way, I'll point out that everyone on this call and everybody who's registered for this webcast will receive the ebook of our survey results afterward. All right, let's dive into it. Next slide, please. All right, so bottom line is most companies automate just a small fraction of their back office processes. That light blue slice of the pie is more than half of our respondents said that they're automating fewer than 40% of their back office tasks. I'd call that the low automation group. The top two tiers, the purplish and green, I'd call them the higher automators, high and very high. That's only 16% of the population that we talk to. And that smallest cohort, that green group that I'd call the very high automators, only 5%. So they're automating 80% of their finance functions. Bottom line is a lot of work to be done in the finance back office. Let's look at the next one, Lindy. So no surprises, accounts payable and accounts receivable are the most manual back office processes. That's the light blue and the orangish yellow slices of the pie, making up more than half of the manual back office processes. Coming in third place, internal audit. So a lot of manual processes around getting prepared to do your audits. Let's go to the next slide, please. All right, only 1 in 7 respondents found that their ERP is sufficient to meet their automation needs. Now here we are for 20 years of cloud-based ERP, and still less than half of the respondents are automating their back office processes. Only 1 out of 7, 14%, are automating what I would say would be a significant part of their finance function. So there really is a true opportunity to automate more. Next slide. And then if you're outsourcing your accounting to either an onshore or offshore outsourcing firm, you have to check their work. So these are not people who work for you, so you're gonna have to verify that they did it right. Literally 72% of people spend almost a full day checking the work that's done by their outsourcers. So let's look at what's the cost of a lost day. In a 20-person accounting team, you'd lose almost 2,000 hours per year at about $125,000. 50-person team, 4,800 hours, over $300,000. And then finally, if you're a 100-person team, you're going to lose almost 10,000 hours a year, and you're looking at some serious change right now, $624,000 of lost time just checking the work of junior accounting people. Next slide. All right, let's dive into a couple of the key challenges in accounts payable and accounts receivable. So on the left-hand side of the screen is accounts payable. And of course, inaccurate invoices are a big time suck. If they got the wrong dollar amount, missing PO, wrong address, of course, that's gonna take up a lot of time. What I find interesting is that if you look at the 28% internal approvals and the 10% internal processes, 38% of people can't get out of their own way. Internal roadblocks are stopping work from getting done in the finance back office. Of course, payment status is a slowdown. Vendors calling you and asking, where's my check? Where's my check? Invoice accruals, and then 14% have said no challenges. And to me, that would indicate that's the 1 out of 7 on the previous slide. Now, on the right-hand side is accounts receivable challenges. And if you look at the lack of responsiveness and repetitive follow-ups, that's a huge number of people who are saying, they have to call and reach out to their customers to say, where's my payment? Where's my payment? Where's my payment? And people aren't getting back to you, and you got to keep repeating the follow-ups. Huge time suck and a drag in the back office. And then finally, inaccurate customer information. If you're sending the bill to a person and they're no longer at the company, or you're sending it to the person who signed the invoice but not the billing department, that's going to cause the time to be lost within the back office. All right, let's move on to the next slide. And I think this is where we start getting into a couple of the challenges. So let's build out this slide a little bit. So the first thing that we see as we talk to our customers is that repetitive tasks and friction in the back office are really a slowdown. Suppliers bothering your AP teams, trying to figure out where the payments are. Your collections clerks chasing your customers for payments. These are areas, as we'll find out when we talk to the panel, that bots can help. Bots can help streamline this. And the next one that we talk about is improving audit readiness. So, audits are fun, right? You have to gather evidentiary data, and sometimes that data is in emails. Sometimes it's email attachments. Sometimes it's on people's hard drives and the shared drives. It's a burden. And if you're a public company, having an early warning system is critical to avoid disasters, which can affect your stock price and therefore your company's performance. Even if you're a private company, you can benefit from an early warning system to uncover transactional anomalies and risks. And then finally on this slide, just getting work done more efficiently, delivering the outcomes that you want without errors, making sure that senior accounting professionals aren't just checking the work of junior people. And this is really our opportunity to use bots to really reimagine how work gets done in the finance back office. So if we skip to the next slide, we think about 3 different ways that bots can help the finance back office with automation. One is augmenting humans in correspondence. These days, bots are a part of our life. You may have interacted with an email bot and you thought you were talking to a person. It's out there, it happens, we all do it. So some of the ways we do it is handling inquiries from vendors looking for payment, reaching out to customers asking for payments. So as I said, bots can interact and appear just like humans, involving the human operator only when needed, because here we are, it's 2020, soon to be 2021. Artificial intelligence is not perfect. Machine learning is getting better, but it's not perfect. And sometimes the bot gets stuck in the mud and finds a question it doesn't know the answer to. So it does reach out to the human operator for assistance to get them unstuck. Executing repetitive tasks and processes. These are all things, they're necessary parts of finance and accounting, but they're not necessarily things we like to do. Preparing journal entries, doing invoice accruals, retrieving tax forms from people. What I sometimes hear people say, or I've heard someone say is, for accounting people out there, if you feel like a robot while you're performing a task, chances are a robot can do that task. So just think about that as you're conducting your day-to-day operations. And then finally, predicting and forecasting algorithmically. So, besides simple tasks, bots are much better than humans at performing complex functions. Think of your average human. Anybody on this panel, I can remember probably 7 things. Chris and Ziggy, they could probably remember 10 things. Lindy can probably remember 20 things. But bots can juggle large data sets with hundreds or thousands of inputs. Even a sophisticated Excel sheet can be problematic and cumbersome, but AI algorithms can take in those hundreds or thousands of variables and produce forecasts that are more accurate, way faster than a human being could. So more so to the point, and we'll get to this when we talk to the panel, in the current economic environment, companies need to know their cash position every single day and where they're headed. Next slide, please. So this is the only slide I'm going to talk about the different categories of bots, and this is what Auditoria offers. I'm not making this a sales pitch, but vendor management is something to think about. Refreshing those tax forms, like right now, it's the end of the year. As we speak, it's mid-November. Reaching out to your vendors, asking for, hey, where's my, do you have an updated W-9? Things like the close process, if you haven't gotten a bill from someone, getting their accruals estimated so that you can accrue. Vendors badgering your team about payment, we talked about that. Collections, no longer do you have to rely on just age and amount to determine where you spend time on collections. You can create a dynamic work list using bots. Bots can even reach out and do the email outreach. your planning efforts, connecting with your ERP or your FP&A system to take in all those different feeds like treasury feeds and providing a closed loop process for cash flow performance. And then finally, audit efforts, performing SOX 401 control testing, 404 control testing, gathering evidentiary data within and outside of your organization. So this is just a little bit of a flavor for the types of things that bots can do to help augment your team. I'm going to end with a case study, just briefly, a company that we implemented. They're a large, mid-sized company based out of San Francisco, a SaaS company. They're growing very dramatically. They have a growing customer base with about 150 new invoices each month, and their collections were all very manual. They used Auditoria bots to help streamline their collections process and to get visibility with key metrics and invoice level details. And the result was, click, click, click. They got their ERP connected to their Auditoria bots within about 20 minutes, spent a couple of days refining the rules and the profiles of who they want to reach out to, because the bots, you can spend time with your VIP customers. You want to talk to them a certain way. You can spend time with your new customers or customers that are very much in arrears and you want to talk to them maybe a little bit differently. So once they got those personas sorted out, they pulled the trigger, and now they've got 3,200 accounts that are interacting with bots every day. So that's it for me. And I think at this point in time, Lindy, I'll turn it back to you to kick off the panel.
Right, Nick. So I guess the bots are coming, right?
Like the Terminator, the bots are coming.
So thanks for that information. The study was really interesting, and I am looking forward to next year's study and learning that. We'll have to have you back on again next year to see the results of that study.
Sounds great.
So great. Well, let's start out with our panelist questions. Okay, so first question, when did the finance back office automation start? When did it pick up steam, and where will it be in 3 to 5 years? Chris, do you want to start and take that?
Yeah, absolutely. Love to kick it off. I mean, sort of funny. I would actually start thinking about sort of finance back office automation starting in really like the early 90s with the advent of ERP, and right, the first ERP and the creation of ERP as a term coming out, and right, moving away from sort of paper ledgers into a more digital environment, and that's sort of the start. And then, fast forward into the early 2000s, you started to get, into what I would call dumb automation or rule-based automation. This is when a lot of AP automation tools started. AvidXchange started in 2000. Bill.com started in 2006, I believe. And then RPA started up in those early days as an outcome of some of the early software testing tools. It took them a while though to sort of really, sort of get a market hold and pick up steam. I would say, early 2010s, so anywhere from 2010 to 2013, it started to pick up steam, right? And then you started to see, new tools and the introduction of more AI-based and cognitive automation come into the fold. So using computer vision and machine learning and natural language processing, right? And that's really sort of come to market really over the past 3 or 4 years. And I would say it's really picking up steam now, right? We're looking at sort of major economic and macro events happening around the world that's really driving a lot more automation, right? Before the pandemic, we had a lot of sort of staffing issues and talent shortages, and that drove us towards automation. Now we're looking for organizational agility, as a result of the pandemic, and that's driving automation. So, I would say it started picking up steam. It started to, really start to grow early 2010s, and then I'd say over the past 2 years, it really picked up steam. You saw a lot more growth. You're seeing more point solutions come to market, AI-backed solutions come to market, as well as a price point. It's becoming much more price friendly for mid-market companies, right? So that, you don't have to bring in data scientists or large platforms to actually do automation. The cost point has come down a whole lot. Specifically on finance, there's a lot of tools out there, from Blackline and Flowcast for close automation, Bill.com, AvidXchange, Bassware for AP automation. You've got Auditoria for AI-backed automation. You've got all these sort of tools, right, that are at our disposal now that never really existed. Going forward, I think you're going to see a lot more AI-backed solutions come to market in the next 3 years, right? As those solutions, AutoML and those types of technologies continue to mature, they get easier, and the democratization of automation really happens, right? You're not going to depend on IT all the time to bring this technology to the forefront. It's really going to be in the hands of the users, right? And I expect that over and over, right? And then the big sort of, question out there is really with blockchain, and how is blockchain going to impact, the entire back office of the finance function, in 5 years, because I expect that's going to continue to have a major impact, from a distributed ledger perspective.
Yeah, really good insights there, Chris. I appreciate that. Nick, as a software vendor playing in the bot space here, what do you think, what's happened in your business during this pandemic, and how has that potentially hastened the interest in automation? You're muted, Nick.
All right. I have a doorbell that rings and a dog that goes crazy. So sorry about that. So yeah, we've seen a marked uptick in interest in the last couple of quarters. When the pandemic first hit and people had to go home and start working from home, it was really the first time, I think, in history, companies closed the books remotely. Before, Maureen, the accounting person, could walk down the hall and say, hey, where's my receipt? Where's my invoice? Where's the information I need? And then now suddenly people don't have that anymore. So terms like business resiliency have been tossed around a lot, and we've seen a lot of people either coming to our booth when we were at Sage Intacct Advantage or stopping by our website to say, hey, look, we can't scale anymore. We can't do this anymore. We can't drive the type of growth in our business and have a linear growth in our accounting function. We need to kind of keep the accounting function growing at a slower pace than our business growth in order to sustain that level of growth that we need. Also, companies that are, I would call pandemic businesses right now, these are the Grubhubs of the world, Uber Eats, DoorDash, Peloton, while the economic downturn has hurt a lot of companies, some are just taking off and they can't even manage their growth today. So we've seen a huge amount of interest in automation, specifically in bot-oriented automation.
It is interesting. I think with with NetSuite and Intacct and Microsoft, Business Central and 365 now, all those web services, we didn't have those. Think about the huge problems that we have, sort of working from home right now. But the fact that we have that internet infrastructure and all these cloud sort of capabilities with Azure and AWS, that has really sort of created the platform for us to sort of grow with right now, because 5, 6, 7 years ago, right when NetSuite was starting to get off the ground, Intacct was getting off the ground. If this had happened then, oh man, we'd be in a world of hurt.
I totally agree, Chris.
Absolutely. You hear about the COVID accelerator, and it has forced a lot of old habits had to be broken. I know, fortunately for us, we have 16 offices, so we already were working in a multi-location environment and not necessarily having access to the people. I couldn't walk down the hall and talk to Lindy because she's in Chicago. So we already had addressed a lot of those remote things, but I know with a lot of clients that I talked to and other friends of mine, if you were a single shop location, that automation, you were used to walking down the hall, you weren't geared towards working remote. And so there's been a major shift to how to deal with that. Even for us on the automation side, we're looking at remote mail services, because 16 offices, we were accustomed to getting mail in our office every day and someone was sorting through it. Well, we're not in the offices anymore. And so how do we start to change those things? Something that's 8 months ago I would not have thought about trying to automate is front of mind from a back office perspective.
So true. Well, good responses, gentlemen. We'll move on to the next question. We do have several other questions, and I know I see questions coming in on the chat already. So the next question, please, on the slide. There we go. So what accounting and finance areas are ripe for automation, and what areas will frankly never be automated? Ziggy, as our CFO, why don't you take the first stab at this one?
All right, happy to. Obviously, Nick mentioned them in his survey. The frontline ones are the high volume, kind of repetitive. They look the same, and that's an AP and AR. Those are prime for automation, and there's lots of opportunities out there. For us, I know that we converted to using a bot to handle our cash receipts coming from our lockbox. And so now 70% of our receipts, and we have about 90,000 receipts a year, are automatically posted directly to the account without any human interaction, with 100% accuracy, because we have a very high tolerance on what's a perfect match. That's all been done by people before. Now they can focus on other things. travel expenses and automation of workflows. Mentioned about walking down the hall and get approvals. There's expense reporting. There's invoice approvals. There's automatic rate thresholds that can be allowed. The one area that we're investing a lot of time in is onboarding and offboarding of employees. There's a whole lot of systems that we have. Chris was mentioning all the different cloud tools. Well, they each have their own logins, and so you use like an Okta or a single sign-on. Well, you need to provision all those for everyone who comes on board. You need to deprovision them once they leave. There's Active Directory, there's expense reporting, there's building access controls, there's payroll issues, there's learning and development opportunities. I know for us, that's a lot of different systems that have integrations. And so when you're having in the current state of, where people are, finance professionals especially are easy targets to move because there's a demand in our marketplaces. There's a lot of onboarding and a lot of offboarding. I know for like Armanino, we bring on about 120 interns every year that are there for 6 weeks. That's 120 new hires and 120 terminations planned every summer. The other areas that Nick mentioned, which are like 1099s and W-2s and I-9s and all that fun stuff, we have automated that as well, mainly for our client perspective, where we are sending out tens of thousands of 1099s on behalf of clients. And how do you do that without being, you can't ramp up the staff fast enough for it. So the bot works 24 hours a day and does that work. To the question of what will never be automated, I can't think of something I would put a stake in the ground and say that can't be automated. I don't want to put a boundary on what the opportunities are. You think about where we were 10 years ago, what we're doing today in automation. I don't want to put a boundary on that. I think there's, the higher, human intellect and thinking is going to be the challenge. But as long as you can simplify it and make it standard, we can put definitely some analytics around it and predictive analytics and to enable people to be more productive.
I love the fact that our modern CFO, went well beyond accounting and finance, talked about facilities and IT and, onboarding and offboarding, so recruiting. I mean, he talked about the whole gambit. But I think he touched upon the two sort of, almost like table stakes right now in terms of AP automation and expense management. Those tools are proven, they're out there, they're, almost off the shelf at this point, they're low cost. Those are almost like the first areas that most people go to. I think bank reconciliation processes are big. I think some of the collections processes are ripe for automation. It is interesting. I read a article a week or two ago from McKinsey that said they have estimated about 77% of the accounting and finance function can be automated. So what's that? What's the remaining 23%? I think it's a lot of analytics. I do think there's decision making, right? I mean, if you're in a cash flow strapped organization, you have to make choices around who to pay and who not to pay, right? And which ones can you get away sort of waiting an extra week or not waiting that, right? Some of that intuition, right? I don't think you can automate that. I think that's sort of some of the stuff, some of those sort of decisions are the things that can't be automated, right? And providing insights right into the numbers and what's behind the numbers, right? You're not going to have a bot that you can go and ask that question and be like, oh, well, why is this customer not paying? And they're like, well, they didn't pay it, blah, 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 right? You're going to get the systems answer. You're not going to get well, I talked to them, they're having a business struggle, et cetera, et cetera. So, and then that sort of relationship stuff that happens, from a collections perspective, right? I believe, at least, organically, as much as I'm a technologist, that there is some relationship aspect of finance, right, with clients, with vendors, right? And, I think that's going to exist because you're always, I think it's just a human aspect of being humans and wanting to work and conversate around some of those things. So, I think that makes up the 23% that McKinsey predicts, will never be automated. But I definitely agree. Expense automation, AP automation are huge. I mean, payroll I think is another area. Receivables, I think credit checking, from a new customer also can be automated very, very easily. Bank reconciliations, all ripe for automation.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I'd summarize the jobs that wouldn't be automated as jobs that require judgment. So judgment is something that human beings can do. And Chris, you gave some great examples about relationships and applying that judgment. The machines, the bots, the algorithms can provide us with the data to make the decisions, but ultimately we have to make the decisions based on human factors and things that machines today, and maybe not even in our lifetimes, can understand. So I think anything that requires judgment will be human beings. Anything that's routine, mundane will be relegated to the bots. And then the bots will also provide us with the raw data and analytics that we need to make those judgments.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, and it seems, those types of jobs are probably more valuable to the companies, right? And more rewarding to the employee because they're not doing those mundane robotic tasks. They're actually adding value to the company.
well, I mean, it's interesting how it will ultimately change the workforce of the future as well. For many of the people probably on the call, you started off in public accounting, and you know of it as the pyramid you start at the bottom, you work your way up, and only a few people get to the partner principal levels. And how we're looking at it from a firm is that automation is going to take off one end of that triangle, and outsourcing offshoring is going to take off the other. So now you have this smaller group of people coming in. You need more people in the middle, and how do you develop them to be productive at a higher level? How do you get them up there faster? So for those of us who in the old days of CPAs, the way you learned to do a 10 key is they tore a page out of the phone book and said, add up a column of phone numbers, and you got and if you really were good, you could do it with both left and right hand. So you could write with one hand and you could punch in the other. That was paying your dues. That's not going to be the case in the future. We need to be able to get people up that curve a lot faster.
Yeah, the whole concept of like digital literacy around, across really all functions across the board, right? And how can we get our organization to be more digitally literate, right? And understand these technologies, and because it is going to be democratized, right? And citizen development and citizen action is going to be, but you still need the basic concepts. So like that, I think is going to be a huge challenge in the future, is you still need to grow people in the profession, but you've got this whole new sector of technology that's impacting. So how do you marry those two things together?
And they're not all going to be, in the finance organization, accounting organization, they're not going to be necessarily coming from the traditional ranks of business schools. It's going to be more IT folks, more data analysts, because that's the skill set that we're going to be needing.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
I agree.
That's a whole conversation, I think, for a whole nother webcast, is really digging deeper on this human element. I definitely will keep that in mind as a topic. We do need to move on. We have several other questions and more chats coming in. So if we can go to the next question there. Okay, what are some of the disruptive technology trends in accounting and finance? Chris, as our digital transformation guru on the call here today, why don't you take first stab at this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think, from a disruptive technology perspective, I do think, the advent, the cloud-based RPA tools that are out there right now, sort of the building of bots are sort of the biggest disruptor right now. It's been a while, it's proven technology. I think computer vision, that form of AI. So when I think about AI, I think about machine learning, I talk about natural language processing, I talk about computer vision. And computer vision, using it around sort of advanced OCR, right, to extract data out of invoices or purchase orders, right? I think that's a hugely disruptive technology, within the finance function. So, just all around the AI aspect of it, I do think, when you talk about natural language processing and digital assistants, I think that's going to be majorly disruptive as well. Into the future. I mean, if we think, globally, I mean, I think just the continued, built upon infrastructure, right? The higher, the faster internet technology is disruptive. 5G is a major disruptor. Once that really sort of gets established, it's really going to allow everybody to work anywhere and have access, as long as you're leveraging some of this cloud technology. But, from a pure automation perspective, I think AI, cognitive solutions, RPA, are all sort of the major disruptors that we're seeing right now, in the accounting and finance area.
Wow, yeah. Again, more topics to talk about at a later date. There's a lot out there to keep up with. Nick or Ziggy, any other thoughts on this one? And we'll move on then.
I'll jump in there. I think one of the things that we've seen in the last 10 years, maybe 20 years, is the move to the cloud. And because it's not just the move to the cloud, which means you can you have your Oracle NetSuite, your Sage Intacct, your Workday ERP. You can work from anywhere. So it opened up this whole realm that Ziggy talked about earlier, that you could work from wherever. But it also, most of these systems have an open API, which means that you can write an application, whether it's Bill.com, Tipalti, Auditoria, whomever, and it's opened up this whole cottage industry where these point solutions have popped up all over the back office, doing things that we never could have done in the on-prem world, the old legacy, put the server in the server room or behind the front desk. That would have never flown. But with cloud and with these open APIs, now we have a whole world that we have yet to even imagine of what we can do in the finance back office.
Very cool.
And absolutely, and what we are finding, because we have people in 30 different states, and Chris, you kind of mentioned it, is 5G, but the digital divide that you have homes now that are, the infrastructure available to our homes to do what Nick said. The challenge has been, you have people who are in their home, 2 workers like I am in my family, but then you also have kids who are homeschooling or schooling on digital. And so therefore that infrastructure is breaking down, and being able to get to the 5G and the availability across the entire country and the entire world is really going to enable us to work really from anywhere and be able to connect all these systems together.
Agreed. Okay, a couple more questions here. Okay, how should an organization start the process of evaluating and implementing back office automation? So Ziggy, from a practical CFO perspective, what are your thoughts here?
As I think about this question, I think a lot of it is about the people and making sure you have the right people in the organization who are wired the right way in terms of looking at the problems as not the edge cases, but the commonality between what the process that you're trying to solve. That may be upgrading your team to make sure you have the right foundation there. If someone has been doing the same job for 20 years, they're probably not the right person to head up an initiative of how to automate an area. Second is when you start to go looking, when you've identified that target, especially if it's new for your organization, is I always like to have a quick win or two that, automate something that is the kind of the no-brainer, and you can bring people along and you can point to later on. I look back, 7 years ago when I became the CFO here, we had 300 plus travelers in expense reports, and it was all Excel spreadsheet based before your time, Lindy. And the first thing I did is I put in Concur. No one was complaining about it. It enabled people to do stuff from their smartphones at the time, and it was a win. And so later on, as I tried to automate other things, I was able to point back and say, well, see what we did with this. And we shortened down. We had a half a FTE who was dedicated to expense reports. Now is down to a couple hours a week, type of deal. Third is engage the subject matter experts. And it may be, if you're dealing with the person who's been there for a long time, who is not automation focused, it is really trying to understand what the normal business case is, what the norm that you're trying to solve for. I know that people can get into, but on Thursdays of every other month, this happens. Okay, that's not what we're solving for. We're not solving for those edge cases. And then when you start to deploy stuff, you can never underestimate the amount of communication and training and the cost of change management that you're going to have. People need to hear things many times before they're absorbed. And so you're going to feel like a broken record trying to say, why are we doing this? And in really emphasizing the why. It's not just for change's sake, there's a business purpose in it. There is, we're in a marketplace where resources are scarce, they're costly. We are, operating in a 24/7 environments. Our human capital people can't do that. And, that's where we can deploy automation to work around the clock.
Yeah, good thoughts.
So.
Good. Hey, Chris, from a consulting perspective, do you have any other thoughts on this question?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think when we work with our clients, I mean, it really starts about with a value-driven approach where we try and understand the opportunity, right? Not a singular opportunity. We want an organizational-wide opportunity, right? So because there is so much technology out there right now, there's a lot of venture-backed technology companies, cognitive solutions, RPA solutions, right? There's a lot out there. And you can very quickly get hit up, by any one of them, and a sales guy could get you real quick. The first thing we want to do is just let's start, understanding the general opportunity with the organization. We have a specific opportunity scan tool that starts to evaluate, the value against the complexity, right? And to Ziggy's point, right, we want low complexity, high value, right? And those are going to be quick wins, but high value, right? And it could be a point solution like a Concur and expense management. It could be a more complex AI solution like Auditoria, or it could be a platform like RPA. And you have to come up with the right portfolio of tools, but you don't want to select tools without understanding the holistic opportunity across all functions. Finance, operations, sales, marketing, HR, IT. Like understand the true opportunity first and foremost, and then try and figure out, okay, what is the portfolio going to look like? Are there point solutions out there that are going to be quick, easy, and cheap? Do I need more of a platform? And really start to understand the ecosystem, in terms of attacking those opportunities. Like I said, focus in on high value, low complexity use cases first and foremost. And I got to echo Ziggy on the organizational change management. What we do with our clients when we're looking at automation, we try and understand, okay, once we know there's an opportunity, the second step is, before we do anything, who does that opportunity affect, and what's going to happen to those people? Because they'll be your biggest barrier if you're not, cognizant of it. And I like to actually go out and say, okay, before we even start this, let's take John Smith. Let's take what's his job description today. What do we foresee it being tomorrow, right? And present that to him and say, hey, we're about to embark on an automation roadmap here and an automation strategy. As part of that, we need your help. And if we do this, this is what your job's going to look like in the future. It's going to be more value add. You're going to probably make more money. You're going to be more loyal to the company. You're going to be happier, and you're going to work probably less, right? Who's not going to like that and then be like, yeah, I'm all for the automation. Like, I'm all for it. So, that's a really important part. Understand the opportunity. Who does it affect? And figure out the solutions that are going to fit the whole organization versus an individual singular point use case.
Yeah.
Great advice and really good perspective.
You've said it very well. I have nothing to add to that. So perfect.
Okay. Well, we have one final question, and I'm going to pick on you, Nick, on this one.
Okay.
So will there ever be a point where humans are no longer needed in finance and accounting? Speaking from the guy who's living, breathing, sleeping, eating automation.
Yeah. So the answer to that question, the short answer is no. There will never be a point where humans are no longer needed. You're always going to have people, as we said earlier in the panel, to make the decisions, to take the data from the bots and make the decisions. I'll tell you a quick story. So, when I was growing up in Cleveland, Ohio, back in the 1970s, my mom drove a 70s Buick station wagon, right? A dirty brown Buick station wagon, and she'd pull that old station wagon into the gas station, and a little guy would come out of the hut. And he'd, roll down the window and, Mrs. Ezzo, what would you like? Fill it up with regular. And, he'd wash the windows, he'd pump the gas, he'd check the oil. It was full service. And sometime during the 1980s, when I was in high school, pay at the pump came along. And that little guy never came out of the hut anymore. It was, you get out, you swipe your credit or debit card, you pump your own gas, you check your own oil if you want to, and you wash your own windshield. And so you have to wonder, like, what happened to that guy? What happened to the guy who came out of the hut? My first answer was, well, maybe that guy became, a pay at the pump installer. Maybe he became a pay at the pump maintainer, or a person who designs pay at the pump. So to elevate that level of work to something that was more meaningful for society. Well, I think the short answer is that guy is still in the hut, but he's in there selling candy bars for $5 and Gatorade for $8. So he's making way more money and not working as hard as he did when he had to run out in the cold rain and snow of Cleveland, Ohio, back in the 1970s. So I guess my point is there will always be new opportunities that are created by technology. And I know that I've seen some of the questions come through the chat. And there is some fear. There's some real fear, and I want to acknowledge that. What employees are most likely to be negatively affected is one that Ted has asked. So, we should acknowledge that people's roles will change. And I think Chris had a great answer that you need to bring people along and help them understand and really sell to people whose jobs will be affected, but help them understand that technology is not there to replace you. It's there to elevate the work that you wanted to do. Nobody wanted to become a CPA because it stands for copy, paste, and attach, right? You want to be you want to have a higher level brain work and be able to be a business partner to the organization and provide that level of value. So that's my answer.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a point where humans are no longer needed. I think the role, and the capabilities and the skill set is going to change. Right? You still need to know finance and accounting to build these automations, to understand these automations, to select the automations, right? So I think it is going to be a more digital role in the future, but I don't think it goes away. I think you still need those understandings, right? I mean, a bot's not going to know when some, new AI CPA rule comes out and how to implement it, right? And how to interpret it, right? I mean, a bot, you can't train someone to do that, or a new, when new tax legislation comes out, right? You still need people to be able to interpret and analyze, right, and implement these technologies. So as a result, like, you can't just expect the humans to just be jettisoned and be gone. So there's always going to be a role, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, there will be. It just the level's going to need to be upgraded in terms of the processing stuff. As we talked earlier about the pyramid of the skill set, and it will be a different skill set. To your point, Nick, the person who's designing the pay at the pump versus the person who is just pumping the gas. But it is going to change the role for a lot of the volume of people in finance going forward.
Great. A couple of the questions are coming through, and it actually, one of them was, what skills should corporate accounting finance staff be developing to be effective with the automation trends? So, we did talk a little bit about that already.
I mean, there's a lot of free training out there. I mean, if you're interested in RPA, Automation Anywhere, UiPath, they have free trainings that are out there. There's a lot of free training that's out there that you can go and learn, right? Or, maybe you want to get into more data blending and learn Alteryx or, tools like that. There's a lot of free training out there that people can go and should be looking at, whether it's on YouTube or YouTube channels, LinkedIn Learning, or directly with vendors. There's a lot of opportunities to learn.
And there is going to be a path for CPAs to be a CPA with an IT background. It's not, accounting.
That's exciting.
Because, I mean, heck, in our audits, what do so Chris, you guys, when you're doing your, the firms are doing the audits, they're relying on the IT folks to do a whole lot of the drilling into the systems for security, yet they can't be a CPA, but it's the old CPA who copy, paste, and attach, who learn their skills and is signing off on the opinion, relying on the expert advice of the IT folks.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's a whole play to be more knowledgeable in data, and what a system is only as good as the data that's going in, right? We all know garbage in, garbage out. If you have faulty data or data that's not clean going in, you're going to have faulty data as your output, and so the algorithms need good, clean data, good, well-labeled data. So I think there's going to be a discipline within the finance function that's all about data cleanliness, data hygiene, understanding large data sets, being able to normalize things and standardize them, and then being able to choose the data sets you want to have the best possible outcome with your algorithms.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've got another question coming in. We got a lot of questions, you guys, out here in Q&A. So thanks everybody on our call here for typing in some good questions. So how will the controller or CFO role change with automation? I mean, it sounds like a lot of the automation tools we've been talking about are more clerk-based, right? They're more the lower level tasks that are going to be automated. Sort of, what do you guys think about the controller and or the CFO and the role changing?
Yeah, I mean, the way I see the CFO, I mean, Ziggy, started going into it. One, just in general, the CFO is expected to be more strategic, right? In the digital age, we're expecting them to be more of an evangelist of digital technology and automation, right? So they're more of a organizational change agent versus a traditional accountant, right? And they're working on how to grow the business, how we use our treasury function to best optimize our business performance, right? So it's a lot more strategic in nature. And I think that rolls down to the controller who, once again, is going to get away from sort of maybe the classic clerk accounting type task, right? It is more decision making, it's more analytics, it's more strategic type stuff. but they're going to be, I think the controller is going to be more strategic around finance, while the CFO is more sort of full back office strategic, as you look at HR and IT and legal all starting to roll up into the CFO.
Cool.
And I think I heard this term the other day, and it may be something with you, Nick, in a prior webinar, but they talked about the non-carbon based worker that we have, the bot, and how do you deploy those? And you have those workers out there. You got to make sure they're doing the job right. So some of the same review process, that they're going to do it right 100% of the time, but they're going to do it the same way 100% of the time. Your job as the controller is to make sure that that it was programmed correctly and is doing it right, because otherwise you're going to be 100% wrong. It's a different workforce that you're working with and a different skill set.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, both the controller and the CFO role, I think, are evolving to be less about, accounting for what happened historically, looking in the rearview mirror, and they're starting to look more toward what's happening in the future. So being that business partner to the CEO and to the board. The analogy, again, like here's a nerdy analogy for you, but if the CEO is Captain Kirk, the CFO or controller is Spock, right? It's the number one. It's the right-hand man or woman to that person. And I think in many ways, both the controller and the CFO are becoming more like a COO. And I think, Ziggy, you just said that perfectly, that they have operational control over a wide expanse of things, from HR to finance to IT in many cases, and then ultimately to manage the risk within the organization.
Yeah, good insights. Hey, Peter, thanks for joining today. I haven't talked to you in a while. So Peter thought your CPA thing, Nick, was copy, paste, amen.
That works.
So a really interesting couple questions, and we won't take too much time here. We're running out. We have so many questions. But Nick, just really quick, what kind of skill set do you hire to create the bots? Are these systems engineers, or are they computer programmers?
Yeah, real quick, it's a blend of people who have domain expertise in artificial intelligence, machine learning, natural language processing, so people understand how humans and bots can communicate with each other, and optical character recognition, which is scanning documents, PDFs, handwritten notes, and ingesting that into the system. So that's just the core stuff. But you have to have domain expertise within finance and accounting. Like, if you don't have that, then you can't build anything, right? So we do have people who are on staff who are CPAs, who are accountants, who have 20 plus years of accounting history. I came from Sage Intacct prior to joining Auditoria, and we hired almost exclusively accountants for roles like solutions consultants. Even some of our sales reps are former controllers and accounting people. So I think you have to have that domain expertise, otherwise you don't have the credibility with this audience. And with this audience, they care a lot about your experience and your credibility.
Yeah, I will say from like our intelligent automation practice, we're generally hiring people with business backgrounds. They tend to be on the more technical side, but they could be an accounting or finance person that had an IT minor, right, a technology minor, or computer information systems, management information systems that had a business, right. It's generally not the computer systems, the computer engineering, sort of the hardcore coders. Like, the technology is being built now for less technical people and more business-minded people. And the sweet spot right now is sort of the people that sit in the middle. Right now, those are the people, in my opinion, and I've said this for a long time, that you want career growth. Like, look at those people who can span both the business and technology, right? And they're going to have a huge impact on the world over the next 10 years.
Yeah, those are good insights. So, kind of to wrap up the education, the profile, I mean, it sounds like, a little bit of accounting and technology, is going to be needed in the future. So hopefully, Ziggy, what you said, that CPAs with, getting other, areas under their belts in college will really help this a lot. I've got a ton of questions coming in here on what specific bots are out there and what you're automating, Nick. I'm going to direct everybody to Nick's website. So it's auditoria.ai. And I'm sure you have videos, and I'm
demos,
fairly
videos,
certain you have a bot on your website that will ask questions, that will talk to them, right?
It's me, but yeah, I'm the bot.
Yeah. The little man behind the scene, right? Exactly.
Yeah, so,
Actually, one emailing everybody back. I think it's important. I mean, yeah, Auditoria's got, you know, some nice, wonderful pre-built stuff. I mean, with RPA, you can build, you know, almost anything, you know, across the board, you know, anything that's repetitive. So there's a lot of, you know, various options out there, right, around automation. You know, I think it's always, you know, imperative to look and see what you can get off the shelf first. I mean, that just goes true for all mid-market companies. Look off the shelf before you build. Building's not that complex, but, you know, off the shelf is always going to work better.
And to add on to that, Chris, I know in doing a number of system implementations of my own, it is easy in an organization to say we're different than everyone else that's out there. And so therefore we want it customized for us. And the reality is when you peel back the covers, and I see that your gesture there, Nick, is that business for the most part is business. And we may have our own nuances. You know, there's stuff that we have as the Armanino way of doing things, not that it's right. And so when you're looking at bots, when you're looking at systems, really try and not want to customize it to your specific workflow. The reason why you're going to an Intacct or an Auditoria is to leverage what they are doing well. And so find the right partner and adopt their practices and do your darndest not to modify it to, well, this is the way we want our columns in ABC order instead of CBA. Well, does it matter? Use what's out of the box if you possibly can.
Yeah, that's a great point, Ziggy. And actually, Armanino is partnering with Auditoria to, you know, we have about 1,500 clients on Intacct. We're partnering to get more movement in our Intacct base to get them to move to Auditoria. So, you know, you can reach out to me as well or Nick. We're partnering on this together, and we'd be happy to share our experience and our expertise actually with you. You know, post webcast here and into the future. So we're always available to help. Well, with just a couple minutes left, we got to most of the questions, I think, but we have a little bit of wrap up here. So if you can go to the next slide. A little bit, you know, wanted to thank our audience for participating. Great questions, really lively conversations by our esteemed panelists. Thank you guys so much. We have links here on this that you'll be able to download this deck. And the webcast membership promo is in yellow highlight here. So it's Automation 20. So feel free to go use that and sign up for the Controllers Council and reap the benefits of our growing, very fast growing community here in the world of the controller. I think I've got to save the date. Yep. So we've got some other webcasts coming up. We've got a free CPE class coming up right after Thanksgiving. We've got Order to Cash and Treasury. That's really going to be exciting. Armanino is presenting the one on the 15th. You survived 2020, how to thrive in 2021. So we've got a really lively set of panelists there for you. And another all-important tax update coming up the same day. And then so excited for our annual outlook. We have two economists that are going to present their differing and maybe similar views as well for 2021. So not to miss any of these. They are recorded and archived for you, you know, for your, if you can't make the time, but try and join us if at all possible. And really, guys, thank you so much for today's panel. Thought it was great. Lots of energy, lots of great information. And thank you to our attendees for your participation. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day and a very happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, bye-bye.